The 7 creatures Enoch saw in heaven, but the Bible kept hidden. Have you ever imagined being taken to heaven and seeing something so extraordinary, so terrifying, that no one else ever dared to speak of it? What if I told you there was a man who did see it, and everything he described was erased from the books? You know his name was Enoch, and he did not die. He was taken alive by God. But the most striking part wasn't that he was taken, but what he saw there. The heaven Enoch describes is not just light harps and angels singing. He talks about creatures, beings with shapes so strange, so immense, and so beyond our comprehension that most modern Christians are unaware they exist. These visions were detailed in a book that the church decided to silence, the Book of Enoch, an ancient, forbidden, and powerful text. However, it survived, and today I will show you the 7 creatures that Enoch saw in heaven, those that have been hidden from you. Let me warn you that some of these descriptions might change. Everything you believe you know about what awaits you on the other side is because what he saw is nothing like what we've been taught in Sunday sermons. Are you ready to discover it? Click the subscription button and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any of our new videos. Enoch is one of the most mysterious characters in the entire Bible, and the strangest part is that, although barely mentioned, he had a unique fate. He never saw death. The Bible simply says, Enoch walked with God. And he was no more, for God took him. But what does that mean? Where did God take him? What did he see? What almost nobody knows is that there is an entire book attributed to him, an ancient book supposedly written even before the flood, according to tradition, and lost for centuries. The Book of Enoch. This book was known to the desert Jews, the Essenes, and was respected by many early Christians. In fact, it is directly quoted in the Bible itself, in the book of Jude 1 verse 14 and 15. This means it was part of the spiritual imagination of the early followers of Jesus, but then something changed when the first church councils began to decide which books could or could not be read. The Book of Enoch was set aside. They said it was too mystical, too wild, and that its stories did not fit with the theology the church wanted to build. The result was that the book was rejected and forgotten, and it only survived in one place. Ethiopia, for some reason, preserved it for millennia, and it was only rediscovered in more recent times. Today, thanks to that, we can read the visions Enoch described in incredible detail, and among those visions were creatures no other prophet dared to describe before continuing with the video. I must address a very important and delicate topic. I'm talking about the excessive consumption of pornography by Christians. This practice has been growing a lot in recent years and seems to have no solution because it is a delicate subject few people speak about. That's why we developed the method, the end of the prison. With it, you'll have a daily plan of closeness to God and complete material that includes strategies for digital protection and mental renewal designed to help you restore your spiritual connection with God and eliminate once and for all that feeling of guilt you have when consuming such content. If you are interested in transforming your relationship with God, click now on the first pinned comment and take your first step. Now, let's return to the video. The first creature Enoch speaks of is not exactly a monster, but neither is it just another angel of light. He calls them the Watchers. According to the Book of Enoch, these beings were sent to Earth with a divine mission to watch over humanity. They were powerful angels full of celestial glory with radiant faces and a presence so intense that even the mountains trembled before them. They had deep knowledge of heaven, the stars, and creation, and thus were chosen as guardians among men. But they failed, and what happened next changed the fate of the world. These angels saw the daughters of men and were captivated by their beauty. They took human wives, taught forbidden secrets, and revealed knowledge that humanity was never meant to have, such as metallurgy, sorcery, and astrology, and because of this, they corrupted creation. From their union came the Nephilim giants, and the world was filled with violence, chaos, and sin. Enoch saw the Watchers after their fall, and what he described is chilling. They were imprisoned in a dark place, a realm of eternal torment awaiting judgment. They still had a powerful appearance, but were distorted by their transgression, a disturbing mix of what was once celestial and what had now become a shadow of evil. He saw the archangel Michael himself tasked with casting them down. Enoch saw the abyss, saw flaming chains, saw the watchers thrown into darkness forever, and at that moment he realized something powerful. Heaven is not just made of glory, but also of justice, a justice so fierce it reaches even the angels. Then came Enoch's next vision, which was even harder to comprehend. He was taken to a place of intense light, and there he saw beings made entirely of fire. Yes, fire. Not symbolically, but literally flaming angels with incandescent bodies that seemed to burn without consuming themselves. They did not have a clear human form. Their outlines flickered like living flames, and when they spoke, tongues of fire came out of their mouths. Enoch says their voices sounded like rolling thunder through the fire. These angels were not near the throne but stationed near the abyss. They stood as guardians or sentinels, watching the place where the fallen angels awaited eternal judgment. Their presence was overwhelming. Enoch could not clearly describe what they were like, saying that his mind was confused just trying to process their forms. It was as if the logic of the physical world did not apply to them. They did not speak like us. They pronounced words in a language that seemed alive, each sound carrying fire, each syllable sending waves of heat through the air. Enoch listened to them, but could not understand them. He only felt the weight of their voices deep in his soul. In their presence, Enoch felt the weight of glory but also fear because these angels did not seem welcoming but rather guardians of the boundary between the sacred and the forbidden, and upon seeing them, Enoch said it was like looking at a part of heaven that was never meant for human eyes after passing through the darkest regions. Enoch is taken to a vast and silent place where he sees the gates of heaven, but these gates were not of stone or gold. They were cosmic openings through which invisible forces flowed. Winds, seasons, stars, modern spirits, each of these gates was guarded by a creature. Enoch did not call them angels. He simply said they were different from the form of man. He could barely describe them, as if his mind could not grasp what he was seeing. These guardians seemed to be part of heaven's very structure, motionless, powerful, and inaccessible. They stood to ensure that nothing passed through the portals without divine permission, and Enoch respected them in silence. At that moment, standing at the edges of heaven, he realized something profound. There are forces in the universe that are not meant to be understood, only respected. Then Enoch saw something even more disturbing. Living stars chained in the sky. He does not speak of distant celestial bodies. He clearly states that he saw 7 stars, each in chains, burning with eternal fire in the silence of space. They screamed, yes, they screamed, but these were not ordinary stars. They were fallen angels who abandoned their celestial path and broke the boundaries God had set. Each star had its own shape, like living, deformed bodies, still conscious, still aware, but condemned to a cosmic sentence of pain. Enoch writes that these beings were left. There was a sign, a reminder that even the heavens are not exempt from divine justice, and when he saw them, he did not feel anger or judgment but sorrow because these creatures, once glorious, now screamed in endless torment, chained in the sky like open wounds in the very heavens among all the beings. Enoch saw some of the most majestic were the great archangels. He saw them gathered before the presence of the Almighty, dressed in clothes that shone like the sun with faces that no human tongue could describe. Their voices were not gentle. They were like thunder, like trumpets resonating through the heavens, announcing glory and judgment. Every word they spoke seemed to carry the weight of eternity. Enoch named some of them Michael, Raphael, Gabriel, and Uriel, but their presence went beyond individuality. They were not there as warriors, nor just as messengers. They stood as pillars of divine order. They looked directly at the throne without fear, sang, proclaimed, and weighed hearts. Before them, Enoch not only knelt but also felt his soul laid bare because in the presence of the archangels, all falsehood and every trace of pride or vanity simply vanished further on in his journey. Enoch is taken to the edge of a great abyss. There, standing before a scene of profound darkness and inextinguishable fire, He sees something that leaves him speechless, a creature with many heads, an immense and motionless being whose presence seemed to dominate the entire realm. Its heads moved in different directions as if observing everything at once. Some roared, others whispered, and some were covered with eyes. Enoch does not describe the creature in detail, but he makes one thing clear: the terror he felt. This being seemed to guard the boundary between the spiritual world and the place of condemnation, a sentinel watching the damned, but also judging anyone who came too close. It was a vision so far from our idea of heaven that it had to be erased, and before it, Enoch could only tremble. The last creature Enoch sees is not made of fire and does not have a monstrous shape, but it might be the most feared of all. It stands before the throne, and around the throne are beings with luminous, almost human appearances, but wrapped in a living, burning light that made them impossible to gaze upon. They held divine instruments, scales, books, and scrolls. These beings had a purpose to weigh souls. They did not judge with words, but with their presence. Enoch saw them, recording thoughts, intentions, actions, and even silences. Nothing escaped their gaze, and it was at that moment when Enoch realized that heaven is not just a place of reward, but also where everything is revealed, where every soul is measured against the truth. These beings did not scream, did not punish, but their mere existence made even the righteous tremble, because who can stand before a light that reveals all? Now you might wonder why all this was removed from the Bible, why these powerful and deep visions were silenced. The truth is that the Book of Enoch made people uncomfortable. It spoke of creatures that did not fit into a simple theology and exposed spiritual realities that went beyond the doctrine church leaders wanted to preserve. It was too mystical, too celestial, and too uncontrollable. The councils that defined the biblical canon were focused on creating unity, doctrine, and control, and the Book of Enoch, with its visions of fallen angels, flaming beings, and cosmic judgment simply did not fit the plan, but that does not mean it is false. It just means it was left out, and that is precisely what I like to explore here on this channel. The things that most people are too afraid to teach because there are ancient treasures that can completely change how we see the spiritual world. If these visions fascinated you as they did me while researching for this video, know that you are not alone. There is something within us that recognizes the truth even when it has been hidden for centuries. The creatures Enoch saw were written about and described in detail, but then silenced, hidden, and forgotten by most today. You have learned about them, and perhaps the heaven that awaits you is very different from what you were taught. The truth is that these visions were not created to entertain, but to awaken, because there is an invisible world around us inhabited, guarded, and balanced by forces we are just beginning to understand, and you are part of it because if you have come this far, it means something in you wants to see more. Now, let's play a little game. Write the word council in the comments, just so it will make people curious trying to figure out what it means, and when I see your comment with that word, I will give it a heart as a reward for completing the challenge.